Listen carefully. Can you hear it? That whisper threading through the silence of Oedon Chapel at midnight, when the incense is burned low and the last prayer has faded into shadow. It's not the wind rattling through broken windows or the settling of ancient stone. No, this sound runs deeper, older, speaking in a language that predates words themselves. It speaks in blood, in the steady drip from fresh wounds, in the rush through living veins, in the slow coagulation of offerings left on cold altars. This is the voice of Oedon, the formless Great One. And tonight, we're going to track an invisible god through the crimson trail he's left across Yharnam's history. Welcome, lore seekers, to another deep dive with Keen 7 Lore, where we unravel the mysteries that lurk in gaming's darkest corners. Tonight's investigation takes us into one of Bloodborne's most enigmatic puzzles. How does a god without form build an empire? How does a being that exists only as voice and blood manipulate an entire civilization across centuries? The answer, as we'll discover, lies not in what we can see, but in what we've been trained to overlook. Every drop of blood spilled in Yharnam, every pregnancy that defies natural law, every whisper in the dark, they all serve the invisible empire of a god who needs no throne because he already flows through every living thing. Think about your last journey through Yharnam. You've walked past Oedon Chapel countless times, perhaps used it as a safe haven, sent survivors there for shelter. But did you ever wonder why this humble, seemingly unremarkable building stands untouched while the rest of the city burns? Why do people feel inexplicably drawn to its threshold? The chapel dweller speaks of it as sanctuary, but he doesn't understand, cannot understand, that he tends to an altar older than the healing church itself, a nexus of power for something that was ancient when the Pthumerians first learned to fear the cosmos. The paradox of Oedon begins with his very nature. Among all the great ones we encounter in Bloodborne, the spider Rom, the reborn Ebrietas, the nightmare-dwelling amygdalae, Oedon alone lacks physical form. The formless Oedon room tells us plainly that this Great One exists only in voice, yet this absence of body hasn't diminished his power. If anything, it's amplified it beyond measure. While other Great Ones can be found, fought, and even killed, how do you battle something that exists between heartbeats, in the space where blood meets oxygen, in the moment of conception itself? This investigation will take us deep into Yharnam's blood-soaked foundations, from the ancient Pthumerian labyrinths where Queen Yharnam still weeps for her stolen child, to the modern streets where unsuspecting women find themselves pregnant with celestial horrors after the blood moon rises. We'll trace how a formless god creates form through others, how worship happens without awareness, and how every hunter who's ever pulled a trigger or swung a blade has unknowingly served in Oedon's invisible empire. The Ascended Absence beckons us deeper now, into territories where conventional understanding breaks down. In Bloodborne's cosmos, the Great Ones exist on different planes of reality. Some dwelling in nightmares, others in the physical world, but Oedon occupies a space that defies even these otherworldly categories. The game tells us he has ascended to a higher plane than the rest, suggesting that formlessness isn't a limitation, but an evolution, a state of being so refined that physical matter becomes irrelevant. If you're enjoying this deep dive so far, I'd genuinely appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. It makes a real difference in helping this video reach fellow lore enthusiasts through YouTube's algorithm. Your support means everything and helps keep these in-depth explorations coming. Consider the implications of existing purely as voice. Voice requires no vessel, needs no specific location, can manifest anywhere there's a medium to carry it. And in Yharnam, that medium is blood. The connection isn't metaphorical, it's explicitly stated that blood serves as the essence of the formless Great One, Oedon. Every transfusion, every injection, every spilled drop creates another channel for his presence. The healing church thought they were performing medicine, but they were actually conducting a mass communion with an entity they couldn't even perceive. The etymology of Oedon's name offers intriguing parallels that the community has extensively analyzed. The similarity to Odin from Norse mythology, a god associated with wisdom, death, and importantly, self-sacrifice for knowledge, seems hardly coincidental. Like Oedon, who gave his eye for wisdom, Oedon has sacrificed physical form itself for something greater. Some scholars in the Bloodborne community also draw connections to Lovecraft's Azathoth, the blind idiot god who dreams reality into existence while remaining fundamentally unconscious of his creation. But Oedon seems far from unconscious. His actions throughout Yharnam's history show deliberate, if alien, intent. The Carol runes provide our only visual representation of Oedon's nature, and they're telling in their abstraction. While other Great One's runes depict recognizable forms, eyes, tentacles, cosmic bodies, Oedon's runes are pure symbolism, geometric patterns that suggest sound waves or ripples in liquid. The Formless Oedon rune increases Quicksilver bullet capacity, creating a direct mechanical link between Oedon and the mercury blood ammunition that hunters use. Think about that connection. Every shot fired in Yharnam requires blood sacrifice, mercury mixing with vitae to create destruction. The hunters believe they're fighting beasts, but they're actually performing blood rituals with every trigger pull. This brings us to perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Oedon's formless nature: his reproductive methodology. Physical Great Ones can mate, however grotesquely, with physical beings. But how does a voice reproduce? How does sound impregnate? The answer, as we'll explore, involves violations that transcend the merely physical, reaching into the very essence of what it means to create life. If you're finding value in this exploration so far, consider subscribing to support the channel and join our growing community of lore enthusiasts. Your support truly makes these deep investigations possible. Blood as divine currency runs through every transaction in Yharnam, though few understand the exchange rate or even that they're participating in an economy at all. The Healing Church built its power on blood ministration, thinking themselves masters of a medical miracle, but they were merely middle management in Oedon's vast enterprise. Every patient who received the old blood, every citizen who lined up for treatment, every beast that emerged from excessive consumption, all of them were making deposits into an account they couldn't see, accumulating interest for a creditor they'd never meet. The Pthumerians understood this relationship far better than their surface-dwelling descendants. Their entire civilization developed around blood's sacred properties, not as a medical tool, but as a medium of communion with the cosmos. The old labyrinth chalices still brim with ritual blood, preserved across millennia, not through any chemical process, but through reverence itself. When we perform chalice rituals, mixing blood with arcane materials to create new dungeon layers, we're not just generating gameplay content, we're participating in the same blood economy that destroyed Pthumerian. But why blood specifically? Why not another bodily fluid or essence? The game provides hints through its deeper lore. Blood carries more than oxygen and nutrients. In Bloodborne's universe, it carries consciousness itself, memory, and most crucially, the potential for evolution. The old blood discovered in the labyrinths wasn't just infected or corrupted, it was pregnant with possibility, containing within it the genetic keys to transcendence. When humans consume it, they don't just heal, they begin transforming into something else entirely, their DNA rewriting itself according to patterns older than terrestrial life. Quicksilver bullets present a fascinating case study in blood economics. Mercury, that liquid metal also known as Quicksilver, has long been associated with transformation and madness in real-world alchemy. In Bloodborne, hunters literally mix their own blood with mercury to create ammunition, spending health to generate bullets. This isn't just a gameplay mechanic, it's a theological statement. Every shot fired requires blood sacrifice, creating a perfect closed loop where violence demands blood, which generates more violence, which spills more blood. Oedon doesn't need worshippers who pray, he needs worshippers who bleed. The Formless Oedon rune's effect, increasing Quicksilver bullet capacity, suddenly makes horrifying sense. By carrying more bullets, hunters can perform more blood sacrifices, creating more channels for Oedon's voice to manifest. The Oedon Wreath rune takes this even further, generating bullets from visceral attacks, the most intimate, bloody form of violence possible. You're literally reaching into an enemy's body, tearing out their essence, and transforming it into ammunition. If that's not worship, what is? The blood vial system itself operates on similar principles. Hunters inject themselves with blood taken from others, healing through consumption of life essence. The church makes these vials from ministration blood, but where does that blood come from? The game hints at vast blood farms, specially bred humans kept as living donors, their veins tapped again and again to fuel Yharnam's addiction. These poor souls serve as unwitting priests in Oedon's church, their suffering transformed into healing, their life force circulating through thousands of bodies, carrying whispers of the formless God with every injection. Consider the blood ecosystem from this perspective. When you kill an enemy and absorb their blood echoes, you're not just gaining experience points, you're collecting the resonance of spilled blood, the final gasps of life force that echo through the cosmos. These echoes don't just make you stronger, they attune you closer to the Great One's frequency. By the time a hunter has absorbed thousands of blood echoes, they become a walking antenna for otherworldly influence, their body primed to hear voices that normal humans cannot perceive. The blood-drunk hunters exemplify the terminal stage of this economy. Father Gascoigne, Henrik, the Bloody Crow of Canehurst, all of them have consumed so much blood, spilled so much blood, that they become intoxicated on it. But it's not a chemical intoxication, it's a spiritual one. They're drunk on Eden's voice, hearing his whispers in every drop, unable to resist the urge to create more blood, more violence, more echoes for the formless god to inhabit. The Pthumerian queen's tragedy anchors Oedon's empire in ancient atrocity, a primordial violation that established the pattern for all of Yharnam's future suffering. Queen Yharnam stands as perhaps the most tragic figure in all of Bloodborne, not because she died, but because she didn't. She exists in perpetual mourning for a child who was stillborn yet somehow still lives, trapped between states like a paradoxical infant, existing in two states simultaneously, neither fully dead nor truly alive. When you encounter Queen Yharnam in the Chalice dungeons, she appears in blood-stained white robes, her belly still swollen with pregnancy, despite the fact that her child was torn from her womb in worship of the gods, eons ago. This isn't poetic exaggeration. Mergo, her child with Oedon, exists simultaneously as an absence and a presence, crying out from the nightmare of Mensis, while also being fundamentally not there. The game never shows us Mergo directly because there's nothing to show. Like his father, he exists only as voice, as the wet nurse's empty arms suggest. The mechanism of Yharnam's impregnation provides our first concrete example of how a formless god reproduces. It wasn't through physical contact. It couldn't be. Instead, evidence suggests it happened through blood ritual, through the Pthumerian's attempts to commune with the Great Ones. Yharnam's special blood, her position as queen, made her the perfect vessel for an experiment in divine reproduction. The Pthumerians thought they were creating a blessed child, a bridge between their civilization and the cosmos. Instead, they created an impossibility, a child of form and formlessness doomed to exist in neither state completely. During the boss fight with Queen Yharnam, you can hear Mergo crying. Think about that. A baby's wail echoing from inside a mother who's been pregnant for millennia, a sound without a source, just like his father. This creates one of Bloodborne's most disturbing images. An eternal pregnancy that can never resolve. A mother who can never give birth because her child exists outside the normal parameters of life and death. She bleeds continuously. Those drops of royal blood still carrying Oedon's essence, still whispering his voice across ages. The Pthumerians' entire civilization crumbled in the wake of this violation. They had built their society around communion with the Great Ones, but Oedon's attention proved catastrophic. The labyrinth itself might be seen as one massive tomb womb, layers upon layers of burial chambers and birthing rooms where the boundaries between death and creation dissolved entirely. The Pthumerian descendants we encounter, the shadows, the elder, the descendant bosses, all serve as eternal guardians of this primal scene, protecting and perpetuating the site of the original sin. Mergo's consciousness, trapped in the nightmare of Mensis, becomes the focus of the school of Mensis's insane ritual. They sought audience with Mergo, thinking to use the infant Great One as a conduit to higher knowledge. But Mergo isn't just any infant Great One. He's Oedon's child, carrying within his non-existence the voice of the Formless Father. When the School of Menses made contact, their brains couldn't process what they heard. The entire school died instantly, their consciousness scattered, their bodies frozen in positions of supplication around their grotesque brain of eyes. The wet nurse, Mergo's guardian, presents another layer of wrongness. She appears to be holding and nursing a baby, but her arms cradle emptiness. She performs all the motions of maternal care for a child who isn't there, or rather, who exists only as sound. During the boss fight, when Mergo's cries grow louder, the wet nurse becomes more aggressive, more desperate. She's not just protecting Mergo. She's protecting the very concept of him, the idea of a child that can never fully manifest. This pattern-forced pregnancy, impossible birth, eternal suspension between states becomes Oedon's signature throughout Yharnam's history. Queen Yharnam established the template, a woman of special blood, violated by an incomprehensible force, bearing a child that exists outside normal reality. Every subsequent pregnancy follows this pattern, though none achieve quite the same level of cosmic horror as the original. The chapel's secret purpose reveals itself not through grand architecture or obvious symbols, but through absence. The absence of beasts during the hunt. The absence of obvious protection. The absence of any logical reason why this humble building should serve as sanctuary when cathedrals fall and houses burn. Oedon Chapel presents as barely more than a ruin, its wooden doors rotting, its stones crumbling, yet something keeps the horror at bay. That something is ownership. This is Oedon's house, and even beasts know better than to trespass uninvited. The chapel dweller embodies innocence, serving evil without knowledge or intent. This gentle, malformed soul tends to Oedon's sanctuary with genuine compassion, inviting survivors to shelter, offering comfort to the terrified. He has no idea that he's gathering sacrifices, no understanding that the chapel's safety comes with a price that won't be collected immediately, but will come due eventually. His devotion to helping others could be seen as making him the perfect, unwitting priest for a god who operates through inadvertent worship. Look at who gets drawn to the chapel during the night of the hunt: Arianna, carrying Cainhurst blood, the suspicious man who murdered his own family. The old woman who speaks of gods and curses. Adela, a blood saint of the healing church. Each brings their own form of blood corruption, their own connection to Yharnam's cursed vitae. They think they're seeking safety, but they're actually answering a call they can't consciously hear, gathering at Oedon's altar like iron filings drawn to a magnet. The chapel's architecture tells its own story, if you know how to read it. The building predates the healing church, despite bearing religious imagery, suggesting the church built upon an existing sacred site. The gravestones crowd so close they seem to be pressing inward, as if the dead themselves seek proximity to whatever power resides here. Underground, the chapel connects to the old labyrinth through Gascoigne's tomb, creating a direct link between the surface church and the Pthumerian depths, where Oedon first made his presence known. The amygdalae clinging to the chapel's exterior add another dimension to its purpose. These lesser great ones, visible only to those with sufficient insight, guard the building like grotesque gargoyles. But they don't attack those who approach. They simply watch, observe, report. To whom? The game never explicitly states, but their presence at Oedon's chapel, while the formless god himself cannot be seen, suggests they serve as his eyes, his physical representatives in a world he can only touch through blood and voice. During the blood moon phase, the chapel becomes even more significant. This is when Arianna becomes pregnant with Oedon's child, conceived without any physical contact, without any visible father. She speaks of feeling unwell, of strange sensations, but she has no context for what's happening to her. The chapel dweller notices nothing unusual. How could he? The violation happens at a frequency only special blood can perceive, a whisper that becomes a scream, that becomes a child. The placement of various runes and items around the chapel provides additional evidence of its true purpose. Blood vials can be found in abundance here, more than logic would suggest for such a humble building. The Formless Oedon rune itself is obtained from the chapel, dropped when you complete certain quest lines that all involve blood, pregnancy, or murder. Even the chapel's messenger bath, where you can purchase items and receive messages from other hunters, sits directly in front of the altar commerce and communion mixing freely in Oedon's house. The blood moon pregnancies represent Oedon's modern methodology, refined from the crude violations of the Pthumerian age into something almost surgical in its precision. When the blood moon rises and the boundary between dream and reality weakens, women with special blood find themselves with child, though no father can be found or named. These aren't random victims, they're carefully selected based on their blood quality, their lineage, their potential to carry a Great One's surrogate. Arianna's pregnancy follows the established pattern, but with unique variations that illuminate Oedon's evolving approach. Her vile blood heritage, descended from Cainhurst nobility who themselves consumed corrupted blood, makes her an ideal vessel. The vile bloods were already marked by their consumption of the forbidden blood, which some scholars believe was Queen Yharnam's own blood, creating a generational link between the ancient violation and the modern one. When Arianna offers you her blood, she mentions it's terribly sorry, as if the blood itself carries awareness of its tainted nature. After the blood moon rises, if Arianna survives and remains in Oedon Chapel, she begins showing signs of pregnancy. Nausea, fatigue, confusion about her condition. She hasn't been with anyone, hasn't left the chapel, yet something grows within her. When she finally gives birth, the result is a celestial larva, a grotesque infant that kills her in the process of emergence. This child, unlike Mergo, has physical form, but it's wrong in every way. Too many limbs, no real face, a body that seems to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Imposter, Iosefka, presents another variation on the theme. This mad doctor, who has replaced the real Iosefka and converted her clinic into a laboratory for human experimentation, also becomes pregnant after the blood moon if left alive. Her pregnancy seems almost like punishment or poetic justice. She, who violated others with her experiments, becomes violated in turn by forces beyond her comprehension. The celestial child she births shares characteristics with Arianna's, but appears more developed, suggesting that Iosefka's medical knowledge and experimental modifications to her own body created a more suitable vessel for Oedon's offspring. What's particularly disturbing about these pregnancies is their inevitability once conditions are met. If a woman with suitable blood is in the right place when the blood moon rises, pregnancy occurs. There's no courtship, no seduction, no choice. Oedon doesn't ask permission because gods don't require consent from their vessels. The women become pregnant through proximity to his voice, through breathing air thick with his whispers, through existing in spaces where the veil has grown thin enough for a formless god to reach through. The celestial larvae themselves raise questions about Oedon's ultimate goals. Unlike Mergo, who exists as pure voice like his father, these modern children have twisted physical forms. Are they failures, unable to achieve true formlessness? Or are they experiments, attempts to create beings that can exist in both states simultaneously? The game never answers definitively, but the fact that Oedon continues creating them suggests either persistent hope or cosmic indifference to failure. Adela the Nun provides a counterpoint to the pregnancy narrative. Despite being a blood saint of the Healing Church, trained specifically to provide special blood for hunters and clerics, she doesn't become pregnant during the blood moon. Instead, she becomes violently jealous if the player takes Arianna's blood, eventually murdering her rival if given the opportunity. This suggests that not all special blood is equal in Oedon's eyes. There are gradients of suitability, hierarchies of vessel quality that determine who receives his attention. The pregnancy theme extends beyond individual violations to encompass Yharnam's entire reproductive philosophy. The Healing Church speaks of being born again, through blood ministration, of citizens becoming children of blood. The Orphan of Kos, though born of a different Great One, shares the theme of impossible births and eternal infant suffering. Even the moon presence's creation of the hunter's dream could be seen as a form of reproduction, birthing new hunters from the death of the old. The invisible network of Oedon's influence stretches through every institution, every tradition, every drop of blood spilled in Yharnam's long history. His touch appears in places you'd never expect, connections that only become visible when you step back and observe the pattern. The healing church worships gods they can see, Ibritas in her altar, the moon presence through their rituals, but they serve Oedon without knowing his name, without recognizing his voice in their own prayers. Every church and chapel in Yharnam bears some connection to Oedon, though most have forgotten or never knew. The grand cathedral, seat of the healing church's power, was built above the entrance to the Pthumerian labyrinth, where Oedon first made contact with humanity. The church's blood ministration, their primary sacrament, serves as mass communion with the formless God. When citizens line up for healing blood, when hunters inject themselves with blood vials, when blood saints offer their veins to those in need, they all participate in Oedon's worship without awareness. Some in the community theorize that the hunter's dream itself might be Oedon's greatest creation, though credit typically goes to the moon presence. Consider what the dream actually does. It resurrects hunters who die, returning them to the waking world to spill more blood. Each death and rebirth creates more violence, more blood echoes, more fuel for the invisible empire. The doll, animated by echoes and love, speaks of hearing whispers in the night, of forces moving beyond perception. Is she hearing the moon presence, or is she hearing the voice that exists in all blood, including the echoes that give her life? Gehrman's workshop, both the dream version and the abandoned original, contains subtle links to Oedon's network. The umbilical cords found there, the doll's presence, the way the dream operates on blood echoes, all of it suggests Oedon's involvement in the dream's creation, or at least its current function. Gehrman himself seems unaware, trapped in his wheelchair, serving as the moon presence's surrogate, but every hunter he trains, every hunter he eventually frees through combat, adds to the mounting tide of blood that feeds the formless god. The various covenants and hunter factions unknowingly serve different aspects of Oedon's empire. The vile bloods seek blood dregs, the executioners spill. Vile blood in vengeance. The school of Mensis attempts to commune with Mergo. The choir seeks audience with the cosmos. All of them generate blood, chaos, and echoes that strengthen Oedon's presence. Their conflicts with each other only amplify the effect, creating an endless cycle of violence that sustains the invisible infrastructure. Even the beasts themselves serve a purpose in Oedon's design. Beasthood represents blood corruption taken to its logical extreme, humanity's form breaking down as the old blood rewrites their DNA according to patterns that predate human evolution. Every beast killed by a hunter creates blood echoes. Every hunter who succumbs to beasthood becomes another source of echoes for other hunters to collect. The plague that seems to threaten Yharnam actually sustains it, creating an ecosystem of violence that generates exactly what Oedon needs. The Bell Maidens who summon adversarial hunters provide another node in the network. These women ring sinister bells that call hunters from other worlds to invade yours, creating conflict where none existed, forcing blood to spill across dimensional boundaries. The bells themselves resonate at frequencies that pierce the veil between worlds. But what powers them? What force allows a simple bell to summon killers from parallel realities? The blood that stains every Bell Maiden's dress potentially provides a hint. They're soaked in it, saturated with Oedon's medium. The Carol runes represent perhaps the most direct form of inadvertent worship. These symbols, transcribed from the inhuman utterings of great ones, allow humans to evolution their bodies and minds. But every rune is also a prayer, a repetition of cosmic words that human throats could never speak. When a hunter etches these runes into their mind, they're literally carving Oedon's language into their consciousness, becoming living prayers to gods they might not even believe in. The greatest blasphemy of Oedon's empire isn't the violence or the blood or even the cosmic horror, it's the systematic violation of consent and motherhood, the transformation of creation into corruption. Every woman in Bloodborne exists under the threat of becoming an unwilling vessel for cosmic horror. Queen Yharnam, Arianna, fake Iosefka, and countless unnamed others throughout history have had their bodies transformed into birthing chambers for things that shouldn't exist. This violation of motherhood represents a perverse reversal of natural order. Birth should bring joy, new life, continuation of the species. In Oedon's empire, pregnancy brings horror, death, and abominations that exist outside normal reality. The mothers don't consent to these pregnancies, can't even understand what's happening to them until it's too late. They become victims of a reproductive system that operates on cosmic rather than biological principles, where compatibility is determined by blood quality rather than genetics. The game forces players to witness and even participate in this system. You can send Arianna to Oedon Chapel knowing what might happen. You can allow fake Iosefka to continue her experiments, understanding she'll eventually become a victim of the same forces she sought to control. You can fight Queen Yharnam while hearing her baby cry, adding to her eternal torment. The game doesn't allow you to save these women or prevent these pregnancies. At best, you can grant them mercy through death. The theme extends beyond literal pregnancy to encompass all forms of creation in Yharnam. The Healing Church births new hunters through blood ministration. The School of Mensis attempts to birth a new age through their contact with Mergo. The player character is birthed into the hunter's dream through their contract. Each of these metaphorical pregnancies carries the same violation of consent, people transformed without true understanding of what they're becoming. From Software's decision to make pregnancy horror so central to Bloodborne's narrative speaks to deeper anxieties about bodily autonomy, medical violation, and reproductive rights. The Healing Church's blood ministration parallels real-world medical systems that have historically experimented on vulnerable populations. The forced pregnancies echo countless historical and contemporary violations of women's reproductive autonomy. The game doesn't offer easy answers or redemptive arcs. It simply presents the horror and asks players to witness it. The player's role in this system becomes increasingly uncomfortable as understanding grows. Every blood vial you use, every echo you collect, every bullet you fire feeds into Oedon's empire. You become complicit through participation, unable to progress without engaging with the blood economy. The game's multiple endings offer different relationships to this complicity, but none allow complete escape from the system's fundamental violations. Even the true ending, where the player becomes an infant, Great One, represents another form of this violation. You've consumed 3 umbilical cords, items obtained through the suffering of mothers and children. Your transformation comes at the cost of perpetuating the cycle, becoming another god who will someday seek surrogates, create impossible pregnancies, violate consent in pursuit of reproduction. The cycle doesn't break, it just shifts to a new perpetrator. As our investigation draws to a close, we must confront the ultimate truth of Oedon's invisible empire. It was never invisible at all. We simply trained ourselves not to see it, to interpret blood as medicine rather than medium, to understand pregnancy as biology rather than theology, to view violence as necessary rather than nutritive. Every institution in Yharnam serves Oedon's purpose. Every tradition feeds his presence. Every hunter who thought they fought against the plague actually fought for it, generating the blood and echoes that sustain the Formless god's influence. The empire that bleeds stretches from the deepest Pthumerian tomb to the highest church spire, from the ancient violation of Queen Yharnam to the modern horrors of the blood moon pregnancies. Oedon didn't conquer Yharnam through force or coercion. He simply existed in the space between heartbeats, in the pause between breaths, in the blood that connects all living things. His empire was built drop by drop, echo by echo, scream by scream, until the entire city pulsed with his voice. Consider what this means for your next hunt through Yharnam streets. Every enemy you face, every blood vial you consume, every echo you collect. You're not just playing a game. You're participating in a theological system, performing rituals in service of a god you cannot see, but who sees through every drop of spilled blood. The hunt never ends because Oedon never hungers less. The blood never stops flowing because the Formless god exists in its flow. The brilliance of Bloodborne's narrative lies in how it hides this cosmic violation in plain sight. Players focus on the beasts, the other great ones, the various human factions and their conflicts. Meanwhile, Oedon operates unopposed, his influence so pervasive it becomes invisible through ubiquity. He doesn't need churches that know his name or priests who preach his word. He has the blood, and in Yharnam, blood is everything. Queen Yharnam still wanders the dungeons, forever pregnant with a child who exists as sound. Mergo still cries from the nightmare, a voice without body calling to a father without form. The celestial larvae, born of modern violations, writhe in their wrongness, testament to the ongoing experiments of a god who seeks perfect surrogates. And somewhere in Oedon Chapel, blood drips steadily from stone to stone, each drop a whisper, each whisper a prayer, each prayer an affirmation of the invisible empire that rules through absence. This investigation into Oedon's nature reveals the darkest truth of Bloodborne's world. The true horror isn't the beasts or the madness or even the cosmic gods themselves. It's the system that perpetuates suffering, that transforms violation into worship, that makes participants of us all. We cannot escape Oedon's empire because we carry it in our veins, speak it with every breath, affirm it with every act of violence committed in the name of progress or survival. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into one of gaming's most enigmatic antagonists. If this exploration of Bloodborne's hidden lore has given you new insight into the game's deeper meanings, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps me continue creating these comprehensive investigations into gaming's most complex narratives. Remember, in Yharnam, as in all of From Software's worlds, the greatest mysteries hide not in darkness, but in the light we're afraid to see them by. Until next time, this has been Keen 7 Lore, and may you find worth in the waking world, though now you know whose empire you truly serve.